You are listening now to the Spirituality Now podcast, the show that is solely focused on practical spirituality, leadership, and mindset skills with the aim and purpose of supporting you master your life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. This is like our fourth attempt to record this podcast, and this ad hoc because the theme of the podcast is why do people suffer? Why do podcasters suffer? Why do entrepreneurs, spiritual practitioners, fathers, mothers, anyone in the world suffer? And how can we take these journeys from samsara to nirvana? And so our guest today, we're going to talk about that. So let's continue with the podcast that we were not able to record before, my friend. And so again, please tell us, how do you pronounce your name?
Ngakpa Konchok Doje Tsondon. So
beautiful. And what does that mean?
That's Ngakpa means yogi, so that's a real yogi from Tibet. That's Vos also. The Konchok Doje Tsondon was given by my teacher, Garchen Rinpoche. That means the person who writes in the sky.
And you, when did you receive the name? Were you in Tibet with your teacher? How did that happen?
So I had several teachers before my teacher have given me that name. No, I was not in Tibet when he have given me that name. I was actually in Edinburgh, but because I was his bodyguard, he have given me some very personal teachings that just me have. And that was some very high teaching. Also, that's the reason I could say I have that have helped me a lot in my life about suffering. So that's where I have got that name.
Yes, and you and I were talking behind the scenes on how you went through your journey as a little boy. You started meditating really early. You were in this quest, like, why do I suffer? Why do people suffer? Why does my parent don't understand my suffering? That's a theme for our collective. Everybody goes, not everybody, a lot of us, not all of us, go through that, questioning why some of our family members go all material or all spiritual. And you know, we got to find peace on that. So as you were in the battles of journeying this, and you encounter music because you are a songwriter, a musician, and anybody, if you hear my bio at the beginning of the podcast of our guest, you will see what he does, a teacher. How was it for you, your before and after life of being initiated into Tibetan Buddhism?
So before Tibetan Buddhism, I was someone who was very depressed, very anxious, very in a deep dark of the soul, I can say. During Tibetan Buddhism, on the first years of my teaching, I was up and down because they call that when you purify your ego, your mind, you get your emotions that go up and down. That's part of the process. Now, in the Vajrayana Buddhism, I see me looking back 30 years in the back, and I see the huge difference is kind of... even if there is a very bad event in my life, I still got the same composition of it's fine, it's just water. That's mind control, that's emotion control, that's understand how your mind works, that's understand your emotion. And when you understand that, after you can use them for better good.
So you experienced, I love this because you are someone that went in a spiritual quest since really young, from Paris to Tibet. From Tibet, you are in Scotland right now. From being a Catholic, right? We were talking about it behind the scenes, to musician, from musician to songwriter, from songwriter to being a father, from being a father to this being a spiritual initiate in Tibet, from samsara to nirvana, from depression to up and down moments, walking through the path of self-realization. And I think that's most of the journey of humans, we have to go through that. We have to go through the mud to experience the illumination of the lotus flower. So I have a question for you. In your bio, it says that you are a teacher of the Vajra. Well, it's called, how do you pronounce it? The Vajrayana teacher. So what is Vajrayana? And does it has anything to do with lightning?
That's in translation in English, that will be the thunder lightning teaching, because that means you can realize your Buddha in one life. To compare the different schools, there is the Hinayana, what is Thai Buddhism. There is the Mahayana, what is both Tibetan Buddhism and basically the other school. And in Tibetan Buddhism and in Indian Buddhism, there is the Vajrayana, what is the higher school of Buddhism, when you basically use the mantras, the teaching, the practice on your daily life to transform yourself and to realize your true nature. That is Vajrayana.
And so, what have you found? How do you, like, through your music, your songs, that you were telling me behind the scenes that your songs, mostly at the beginning, were a lot about the suffering, giving a voice to the suffering, and then finding these, I've watched all the things that you share on the media, and they're beautiful. Let me share a couple of them, because I love that you shared about Milarepa. I love that you shared the quote of samsara is to see the fault in others, to blame others, or the wise adapt themselves to circumstances as water molds itself to the teapot. I love all the sharings, all the teachings that you share are to give a pointer to people that from the distraction, from the self-fault, from the delusions, they can actually experience an emptiness. This is my perception, right? An emptiness, and get in the path on the way of personal illumination, of nirvana, which is the release or letting go of the suffering. So how can you help people? How have you seen that people get help through your teachings to be more aware of their suffering and experience a little bit more bliss in their life?
So I had a student what was talking with me actually on Instagram, and he had so much concept on his mind. So, for example, he had the concept of Tibetan Buddhism. He has the concept of this is that, or that is this. And when I was speaking with him, I was kind of, what he don't understand that Buddha is not in the sky. Buddha is here, just right now, here, just here. You don't need to look everywhere else. He's here. So I've said to him, one of the quotes of the Buddha was kind of saying, sometimes you need to empty your cup to understand that you need to relearn something, because the stuff that you have learned, you have to bring one concept to another concept to another concept. You have speak to about Milarepa. I've got my big connection to Milarepa. I think without Milarepa, I won't be a yogi, because that's him who have inspired me to be a yogi. And that's one of the teaching of Milarepa exactly. It's kind of when you empty the concept, you understand what is Buddha. And I think...
Oh, I love that. I love that when you empty the concepts, you understand what is Buddha. When you empty your inner cup, you can find the Buddha within. And I absolutely love that, because I find that to be so true. And so as a teacher, you share this with your students with these practices, with music.
So
how do you communicate?
So I've got many ways to communicate. Yes, my music is one of the ways that I communicate. That's definitely one of the things that I do. Also, sometimes I like to challenge them, to be honest, because you got in Tibetan Buddhism, you got always the people who say, "Oh yeah, I know that, and that." I used to be like that myself, and one day my teacher have told me something. He told me, "You can be a lawyer in Dharma and know nothing. You can be an ignorant in Dharma and know everything." And I was kind of, oh, when you have told me that, I was kind
Wow.
of, and I was kind of, wow, maybe I need to see something that I don't have seen at first. And I remember at this time I was having a breakup with one of my partner, and we were separating. I had nothing in my life, and I said to myself, let's try what say I have to say my teacher. By I could say the teaching you have given me, I've just took the teaching you have given me and expand on that. I see the huge difference is what you call in martial art. You know, when you focus on one sword and you practice just that sword for 10,000
Yes.
times, you are more dangerous than someone who practices 10,000 things. That's exactly that.
Wow, and that's really powerful. But I love that. You got to continue the practice. So, how important is for you, for your students, for yourself, for what your teacher gave you, to continuously be in the practice, in the mastering, even if you supposedly attain illumination, right? Because the moment you think you have attained something, you lost it. Like the moment I think, oh, I'm enlightened, I'm not enlightened. I have to start all over again because I feel, and I'm zero enlightened whatsoever. I'm in the path of self perfection, of emptying my cup, like you shared. So, what is it? What do you think are three things that people need to focus on for their spiritual path to be honest, disciplined, and congruent for them to experience the essence and the fragrance of their results?
So when I was homeless, I had no practice. So Tibetan Buddhism, you're talking about book of practice. And I remember that I had a practice in my head, and I've just practiced what he was in my head. And I had more results than when I was doing the book. So now I have basically working like all the yogi does. So what people need to do is focus on one thing, whatever they take, one thing. That could be a mantra, that could be a breathing meditation, whatever meditation you're doing, whatever stuff you're doing. Like the Buddha say, doing it on 100%, so focus on one thing, that. The second thing, what is very important is understand that Dharma is love. There's nothing else. There's no
Oh,
vows. There's no teaching, no nothing.
that,
That's love. And when you understand that, you have
Dharma is
understood.
love.
Yes, Dharma is love. There's nothing more than that.
I've
That's
never
just
heard
love.
that before.
And the last thing you were talking about emptiness. So emptiness is very important because when you understand emptiness, you understand that there is no difference between you and me. That we is always happening. And when you got those three things, you are a bit closer than usual than Buddha than you think.
Hmm, that's beautiful. So, is there any last words? We're gonna close up the podcast right now, but we will put links for your music, links to your Instagram for people to follow you. And is there a little blessing that you can give us from the Tibetan tradition for the people that listen to this
Right.
podcast today? Any
Okay.
blessing from them to go from samsara to personal nirvana, and to understand their suffering? Any blessing?
That's called throat singing, and the mantra called Homa Hong, what is the blessing of all the Buddha. Ages I don't have done it, let's try it. So that is the blessing of all the Buddhas.
Thank you for such a, I could feel it, for such a sweet blessing. Thank you everybody that listened to this podcast, and the beautiful accent of my dear friend here, Ngakpa. And my accent, I'm from Mexico speaking English. He's Parisian speaking English. So I think we did the best we can. And also in the copy of this podcast, you're going to see a little summary of what we spoke about, of some of the most important topics shared here. And I will leave you all the information for you to follow this journey, and hopefully for your journey from suffering to personal nirvana, and from samsara to nirvana is of emptiness, of joy, and of a lot of fun too, because why not? I mean, if suffering has such a stellar appearance on earth, why don't we put on stage also good, kind fun? So thank you so much for being in the podcast today, Ngakpa, and thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week with another beautiful guest in the world, and we'll see you next time. Un besito, adios. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere where you prefer to listen to your podcast. Make sure to check the links to everything we mentioned in this episode. For more news, future or past episodes, or for any other inquiry, please visit our website at delaflorteachings.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast.